So, what actually happens when the theater of asylum collides with the permanent reality of our digital age? It's a fascinating, complex, and honestly a pretty chilling question. Today, we're going to unpack what is essentially a modern geopolitical thriller. This is playing out right now on the streets of Europe, and it's fundamentally challenging how we understand truth, evidence, and human migration itself.
Welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to guide you through an incredible investigation called the Neon Mirage. We're going to dive deep into the systemic manufacturing of asylum evidence, this whole concept of staged political activism, and really look at how the digital age has turned the asylum process into a highly dangerous illusion.
All right, let's jump right in. Picture Paris. You've got the Eiffel Tower, the city lights, the whole romantic vibe. But overlaying that iconic scenery is something totally disruptive. We're talking about bright, momentary projections flashing on buildings. It brilliantly illustrates our core theme here, the geopolitics of illusion. Because what might look on the surface like genuine political dissent, well, it's actually a manufactured mirage. It's a calculated performance designed for literally an audience of one, a European asylum judge. But, to really understand how this entire industry of illusion was born, we actually have to go back and look at the law itself.
Which brings us to Part 1, the subjective legal loophole.
So there's a really clear historical divide that explains exactly where the structural vulnerability of this whole system started. Back in 1952, claiming asylum required objective, undeniable physical proof. We're talking about tangible things here, right? Arrest warrants, court documents, documented physical abuse. But then, 1980 hits. We reach a major turning point. The legal standard shifted entirely to a subjective doctrine known as the well-founded fear. Suddenly, courts had to try and evaluate the relationship between an applicant's internal psychological fear and the external conditions of their home country. And, wow, here is where we hit a massive wall. Just ask yourself, how do you prove an invisible, internal fear? You can't exactly put a psychological state into a manila evidence folder, right? This new flexibility, it was definitely designed with good intentions, but it created an enormous loophole. It made the modern asylum system uniquely vulnerable to fraudulent exploitation. Because if fear is invisible, well, then the performance of fear can absolutely be manufactured.
So that leads us into Section 2, the asylum package service. Look, whenever there's a legal loophole, an industry is inevitably going to rise up to monetize it. That's just a given. Smugglers didn't just exploit this loophole, they literally commodified it into a 3-step package service pipeline. Step 1 is the setup. They'll sync a smartphone timer with a high-powered projector in some dim hotel room. Then, Step 2, the deployment. They flash these anti-regime slogans onto historic buildings, but only during a very brief, super-calculated transit window. And finally, Step 3, the result. Because the goal here isn't to raise public awareness at all. The goal is simply to capture a momentary photograph of that projection. And that photo? That serves as simulated persecution evidence to present in European asylum courts. The surreal nature of this is just staggering when you really think about it. An industrial 600-watt projector sitting in a dimly lit room. It is a highly controlled, totally mechanical process. There is zero genuine protest happening here. It's literally just the production of a photograph. It's such a striking representation of how evidence is being completely engineered from the ground up.
Let's move on to Section 3, Theater of Staged Activism.
Now, of course, projections are just one method. This whole industrialization of evidence extends directly to actual human beings essentially playing roles on the streets of Europe. And the absurdities, they are glaring once you know what to look for. First off, you've got the financial transaction. Organizers are paid a flat $500 fee by applicants, purely for a brief photo op outside a Western embassy. Then, look at the props. Whenever you see a genuine protest, the signs are battered, they're worn out, they're written on whatever scraps were available. But here, the cardboard has clean, perfectly uncreased edges. They are pristine theatrical props. And finally, there's just this incredible ideological emptiness. You have these diverse groups of participants woodenly reading from completely unfamiliar scripts. They show zero historical alignment or really any deep understanding of the cause they are supposedly risking their lives for.
But here is the crucial point. European courts are definitely not blind to this. These surplus claims, they are being voided. Judges can easily spot the total absence of internal conviction. When you have a staged protest with pristine props and visibly confused participants, it leads directly to the claim being dismissed as absolute fraud. The theater fails because it completely lacks the core element of genuine asylum, which is real, deeply held fear.
Okay, on to Section 4, the sincerity bug.
So if judges are dismissing these sudden, unconvincing stunts, how do the smugglers adapt? Well, think of it kind of like a cunning software update. In Phase 1, the past, the legal challenge arose because courts were automatically rejecting those sudden, last-minute, super opportunistic stunts. So moving to Phase 2, the present, smugglers adapted by actually A/B testing different types of fake evidence, things like handwritten political manifestos. And this evolves into Phase 3, the ultimate exploit, which experts actually call the sincerity bug. To bypass a judge's skepticism of a sudden action, smugglers started having applicants artificially backdate their fake manifestos by 2 weeks.
Just picture it, a quiet cafe, someone writing a handwritten note. By dating that manifesto 2 weeks prior to their staged protest, the applicant magically creates the illusion of a deep, sustained ideological commitment. They're literally hacking the judge's requirement for sincerity by simply falsifying a longer timeline. It's a remarkably sophisticated, if completely fraudulent countertactic.
Which brings us to Section 5, devaluing purchased evidence. Faced with all these backdated manifestos and elaborate projector setups, the legal system decided to fight back using, of all things, economics. Back in 2016, a really critical precedent was set based on German asylum law. It determined that if a political activity is deemed to be executed solely to secure immigration status, the claim faces instant dismissal. So the new reality is that the sheer volume of duplication has become the system's best defense. Basically, the legal value of the evidence drops to absolute zero when everyone is using the exact same script.
Let this number sink in for a second. 50. When 50 different applicants submit photographs using the exact same 600-watt projector setup, shining the exact same slogan on the exact same Parisian wall, it completely ceases to be an act of rebellion. It is unmistakably classified as a purchased package service. The repetition itself actually becomes the proof of the fraud.
Now for our final part, Section 6, the permanent digital trap.
This brings us to our final and honestly most somber chapter. Because while the European courts might just dismiss the case and move on, the digital footprint of that fake protest, it doesn't just disappear. This is a massive systemic failure. You see, our legal frameworks are basically from the Cold War era. They are fundamentally incapable of processing the sheer volume of modern, AI-augmented migration claims. But back in the applicant's home country, those authoritarian regimes are using 21st century surveillance servers. So while Western courts are rightly dismissing these staged photos as fake, those exact same photos remain permanently immortalized online, getting fed right into facial recognition databases.
And this is the truly tragic synthesis of this entire system. A fake crime staged purely for a visa, with literally no real ideological backing, suddenly guarantees actual persecution the very moment that individual is deported back home. The home country's surveillance state doesn't care that the protest was just a $500 package service. To them, that digital footprint is more than enough evidence.
The irony of this whole architecture of illusion is it's devastating. The European legal system has learned to ignore the neon mirage. They spot the fraud, they deny the visa, and they send the person back. But the permanent digital scars left on these individuals ensure that the consequences of their illusion are dangerously real. They bought a fake protest, and unfortunately, they paid for it with real danger.
Which leaves us with this final, I think, pre-provocative thought to take away. If the evidence is fake, but the digital footprint is permanent, who truly pays the price of the illusion? It is certainly not the smugglers who are out there collecting the fees. It's the desperate applicants, caught entirely in a trap of their own making, immortalized on servers long after the neon mirage has completely faded. Thank you so much for joining me to unpack this really complex issue today. Keep asking questions, keep looking past the surface, and I'll see you in the next explainer.